Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got the updated college football playoff rankings last night. I would say the biggest move was Alabama being ranked in front of Notre Dame. They did that for a very specific reason. I'll talk about it in a second, but this is just the look at what the playoff bracket would be. We're imagining Ohio State and Indiana will be getting byes no matter what happens in the Big Ten championship. They're probably going to be ranked number one and number three after that game. Georgia at this point, if they beat Alabama, they'll probably be ranked number two. And then Texas Tech has a chance to stay at number four if they beat BYU. So likely these could be the top four teams all getting byes depending on what happens. Obviously, Georgia is only 2.5-point favorites over Alabama. So there's a lot of variance with Alabama. Alabama right now sitting at number 9. What I'll say is, you know what, I'll talk about that in a second, but you've got at number 5, Oregon. So they really value the overall analytics with Oregon and the FPI ranking to put them at number 5, above Ole Miss, above A&M, A&M falling all the way to number 7. That's tough if you have to face Notre Dame in round 1. Probably that's not what's going to happen, although we'll see, because the thing now is Alabama being number 9, that allows the committee wiggle room to where if BYU wins and Alabama loses, Bama is still in the playoff. If they ranked Alabama 10, which everybody was saying the 8v9 matchup was, the past few weeks, it's been Notre Dame versus Oklahoma, with Notre Dame being number 9, Alabama being number 10. If BYU wins and Alabama is 10, and let's say Alabama loses, Notre Dame is idle, they don't play this week, they would have to justify keeping Alabama ranked and actually leapfrogging Alabama above Notre Dame after an Alabama loss where Notre Dame doesn't play. Because at that point, Notre Dame would have to drop back from number 5. They'd be out. Bama would still be in even after their loss to Georgia. And BYU would have to be in. And BYU would steal a spot. Because the committee knows that they're not going to, unless Alabama gets destroyed by 50 points, they're not going to really hurt Alabama for losing an extra game against a top 5 team. That's basically what this is, them playing in the SEC championship. So the justification is where, and then they say, oh, they were up 17-0. I mean, the explanation was ridiculous. It makes no sense, but they know because of how things could work out if BYU wins, it's not likely they're going to win, but if they win and Alabama was ranked 10th and Alabama loses on, by 7 points to Georgia, how can you justify leapfrogging Alabama over Notre Dame after Alabama just lost and Notre Dame was on a bye? So, see, that's why they did that. Now Notre Dame is in a spot to where if BYU wins, they are screwed. I mean, unless they are screwed. That's just the reality. So Notre Dame needs BYU to lose. I do think Notre Dame will. If BYU loses, I think Notre Dame makes the playoff as the 10 seed. You have to be the 10 seed because the 11 and 12, well, you know what? I guess if Alabama loses, then Alabama goes back to the 10 and then Notre Dame goes back up to an 8v9 game. So that's another thing that could happen. But it just comes down to, for Notre Dame, BYU. You also have Miami still arguing. I don't think it's going to happen. I know the committee said, well, we're going to reevaluate things. Maybe things will shift. I don't think, based off of the resumes basically already being completed, there's going to be a big change this next week, and the committee is going to say, well, now we need to rank Miami suddenly ahead of Notre Dame, and we value head-to-head so much. But it's not even just head-to-head, it's contextualizing the head-to-head. The head-to-head was in week 1, it wasn't in week 10. If Miami beat Notre Dame in week 10, Miami would be in front of Notre Dame because that game was week 1, because the teams have changed over the time, because Miami lost to SMU and Louisville. I mean, these are all factors that go into it. And that's part of the reason why Miami's out of it. And also Notre Dame has been crushing everyone. But Notre Dame, they don't have a crazy good win. I agree with that. But still, if they're going to be ESPN, FPI number 3 or number 4, it's hard to justify that team being out of the playoff, even without a crazy good win. So that's kind of the story there. And then the conference champ stuff, the auto bid this year, because of how bad the ACC is, it's a complete mess. So if Virginia wins, they will be the 11 seed, pretty much guaranteed. And then dependent on who wins between North Texas and Tulane, that's who's going to be the 12 seed. If Virginia loses, the 11 seed will likely be North Texas or Tulane, and the 12 seed would likely be James Madison. Now, if James Madison and Virginia both lose, the 12 seed is probably going to be Duke. And people are going to be pissed off. So, but that's just the reality of it. And honestly, you could even argue that at that point Duke would be more dangerous than the American champion, but I don't think they would rank Duke above the American champion because they have 5 losses. But it's just the weird quirk of Duke losing all these non-conference games, but still tying for the top two record in the ACC and then getting in on a crazy 4-team tiebreaker. And so that is kind of how that worked out. But that's where we stand right now. That's all the different scenarios. BYU, they're winning in. If they lose, I think they're done. I mean, definitely there's going to be a lot of angry Big 12 fans if BYU loses by 7 points and they're knocked out at 11-2. People are going to be pissed off about that for sure, but that's where we're trending at this point. I don't really see a spot for BYU with another loss. What do you justify them over Notre Dame if the game is close? I mean, that's another thing. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you would really like Texas Tech to easily beat BYU. So there's no argument to where BYU says, "Hey, wait a minute. We barely lost. We're sitting at 11-2. Notre Dame's 10-2. We played in a conference championship and almost beat the number 4 team because Texas Tech. We would think they're probably going to get a bye." I think the way it's going to work, I mean, Alabama, you're looking at them possibly being a 10 seed or maybe a 4 seed. I don't know how high they would move Bama, but you would have to figure if Bama beats Georgia, Bama's going to be in front of Georgia. They have the same record. Bama has beaten them twice if they beat them again. And then you'd have to, I mean, because they're SEC champions, they'd leapfrog, you would think, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and obviously Georgia. Would they leapfrog Oregon? Would Oregon move up to number 4? I mean, because then you're looking at Bama at 11-2 possibly being the number 4 seed. And so if Bama loses, I think they're the 10 seed. If they win, they possibly could be the 4 seed, maybe the 5 seed. I mean, that'll be dependent on where they rank some of these other teams and how much they value an SEC championship versus a one-loss team that doesn't make their title game. So that's another thing to look at. But yeah, it's kind of a mess at this point, and that's how it's going to be every year with this playoff. You can see the playoff percent chance. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got 8 teams with 100%. You've got Alabama at a 96%. So Bama's going to make it. So that's 9 teams. You basically have 11 teams at this point that we know are going to make it, because then you've got the 2 auto bids after these 9 teams here. They say Notre Dame has about, what is this, a 58% chance? Yeah, well, Notre Dame's in a spot to where they need BYU to lose, and they have to fend off against Miami and those arguments. But I mean, again, I don't really see them being able to justify jumping Miami over Notre Dame. The teams have already played all their games. I mean, there could be shifts with the conference championship games. The strength of schedule gets shifted a little bit, but it's not going to shift to any crazy degree that I think would justify pushing Miami in front of Notre Dame at this point. You've got Notre Dame, again, the number 3 team in terms of the FPI. You have Miami at number 7. Now, this is definitely, if you're a Miami fan, if there's one team that comes out of the ACC that should make this playoff, it should be Miami. So if you're a Miami fan, I agree. They're the best team. They're the best team out of the ACC overall, but they have the 2 losses in conference, so they didn't make their title game. They lost out on the tiebreaker. And I just wish there was a system to where they could put Miami in and disregard. But I mean, that's kind of not fair to Virginia. But I mean, Virginia's FPI number 40, Miami's number 7. I mean, that is a crazy, crazy, crazy difference. You've got James Madison at number 28. I wonder where Duke is. Is Duke not even on here? See, I'm surprised they're saying Duke has a 0% chance to make the playoff because of the way the auto qualifiers work in the conferences. There is technically a way they could make it. And even Duke is at 46 in terms of FPI versus Virginia being at number 40. But I mean, I don't think there's a high chance that they make it. It would require James Madison to lose. Right now, they have James Madison at a 50% chance to make the playoff. I think it's lower than that. Because for James Madison to make, well, all James Madison has to do is win and then hope Duke wins. And Duke's only a 2.5 point underdog. So maybe there is a chance. Because I think James Madison is like massive favorites. Against Troy, they're like 23-point favorites. Yeah, so they should definitely win that game. And That's basically what we're looking at. So it comes down to that last spot: Notre Dame, Miami, maybe BYU. If BYU wins, then they're going to be bumped up. If BYU loses, it'll be Notre Dame versus Miami. I think it's already been solved. I think they say we're going to take Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame might move up to the number 9 spot. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be hosting. I don't see any way. Because Notre Dame, again, they could move up to the number 9 spot if Bama loses. Bama would move from 9 to 10 because they'd have 3 losses. There could be a scenario where Bama loses by 3 points and Bama doesn't move down. But let's just say something happens to where Bama loses by 10. Bama moves down to the 10 seed. Notre Dame moves up to the 9, and then it's Oklahoma, Notre Dame in an 8v9 game. And by the way, that's something that you really have to look at as well, because you think about that. I mean, look at the discrepancy in terms of this. Oklahoma number 16 in terms of FPI, Notre Dame number 3. I mean, Notre Dame would go to Oklahoma probably as like 5-point road favorites in that game. So that's another interesting thing to look at there as well. But either way, this is just how it's setting up, guys. A little bit of an update. And if Duke wins, you could get both North Texas and James Madison into the playoff. And I think the top 10 teams, it's already done. It's just a matter of if BYU wins. If BYU wins, they replace Notre Dame. If BYU loses, Notre Dame stays. I don't think Miami, right now it says Miami has an 11% chance. I think Miami's pretty much done. And that's really the one question mark spot. It comes down to BYU versus Notre Dame if BYU wins. And then you also have the potential nuance of an argument if BYU loses by 3 points. Then there's going to be a lot of Big 12 fans that clamor for BYU to be in over Notre Dame and to jump Notre Dame, which I don't know how you can justify it coming off a loss, but they would definitely argue that if Texas Tech wins by 20 points, obviously there's no argument, which I think that's what's going to happen. I think Texas Tech's going to win and cover, but I'm just saying there is that potential for an argument if BYU keeps it close against Texas Tech. And so, I mean, if you like, the thing is, Texas A&M, that was a tough ranking for them at number 7. Because in this bracket especially, if you can be number 5 or number 6, you're going to be huge favorites in the first round. Because you're facing the ACC team and you're facing the group of 5 team. So if you're 5 or 6, you got to be feeling really good. Like you look at Oregon, you're possibly facing North Texas, you're possibly facing Tulane, maybe Duke if things go crazy. Ole Miss is possibly facing Virginia. That's who they would probably play if Virginia wins, obviously. So you really want to be a 5 or a 6. That's a tough situation for A&M if in this scenario where they'd have to face Notre Dame. And by the way, if Alabama wins, that could potentially be the matchup because obviously Bama would not drop back. Notre Dame would stay at 10 if Bama wins against Georgia, and it might end up being Notre Dame versus A&M in a 7v10 game. But then they'd probably, what would you do with Georgia? Do you really want to punish Georgia too much for losing in the SEC championship? Probably not. I'm guessing Georgia would only drop back to like 5 or 6. So there is that as well. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Thank you for watching.